Okay, hey, and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be going over the Colt 1908 vest pocket pistol. A lot of people know about the 1911, of course. A lot of people know about the 1903 hammerlesses in 32, and also the ones in 380. But there really aren't too many people that know about this little guy. So we're going to go over some of the history of it, the function of it, and we're going to even go and shoot a couple rounds of it. So stick around for all that in just a second. Okay, before we can talk about this guy, we're going to have to introduce a pistol that came 5 years before, just a couple years before, by the same designer, shares a lot of the same traits, and that gun is the Colt 1903 pocket hammerless. This particular one was made in 1914, as you can see. It's a little worse for wear, but they were made in 1903 till 1945. I think there were 250,000, 500,000. There were a lot of them made, whatever it was. They're in 32, and they hold 8 rounds, as you can see there. So when John Browning first started designing handguns, he always went straight for military handguns. Bigger rounds. At that time it would have been 38 ACP, but he wanted to get into the civilian market, so he came up with first the FN 1900, which was the first pistol with a slide, first pistol in 32 ACP. It was a very revolutionary design, but it was for FN, and Colt said to him that they wanted a little pocket gun to compete with it here in the United States. So this right here is what he came up with. As you can see, other than the hammerless part, you can see 1911 DNA in there. This would eventually, there's a long line of 1911 design iterations. You could argue that this was one of the predecessors, and it's, you know, got the linear trigger, it's got the grip safety, it's got a manual safety. This one's just a straight blowback. But it's a very basic pistol, a very nice shooting pistol. I think everyone should probably have one of these in their collection at some point. This was actually the first gun I ever had. But let's move on from that, because really, at the time, this was just about as small as you could get for an automatic pistol. But 5 years later, of course, we got this into the mix, and it's in 25 ACP here. It's a lot smaller of a cartridge than 32 like this one was in, but just as a size comparison, let's zoom in here. Right there's the 25. Right there is a 22. There's really not that much difference. 25's thicker, of course. 22 is a little bit taller. The cases are about the same, actually. The 25 is center fire, though, whereas this is, of course, rim fire, so it's more reliable. But that's all it's shooting, and it only holds 6 of those. So even at the time, people probably would have said it's a little bit weak for a gun, but that didn't stop people from buying them. They were a very popular gun, mainly because, I mean, it fits in the palm of your hand. It's a very small pistol, even by today's standards, smaller than an LCP. So let's get into some of the features of it, the mechanics, all that now. Okay, actually, before we get into that, I just want to emphasize how small this is. I've just got a standard 1911 here, Series 70. As you can see, I mean, there's no comparison. The barrel, from the trigger forward, it's almost the same size. It's actually, well, no, it's even a lot thinner. But it's just an absolutely minuscule pistol. Okay, let's go ahead and get into it now. Okay, I've zoomed in quite a lot to get it in there, but here it is. So 25 ACP, and if we read the side here, it's got all the kind of standard Colt markings of the time. Colt's patent, firearms manufacturing company, Hartford, Connecticut. It's got all the patent dates on it, serial numbers there. We got the Colt pony here and here. The earlier ones would have had the gutta percha, the kind of rubber black grips like the 1903 had. This one's a little bit older, so it's got these wood with the medallion. And we got Colt automatic caliber 25. Another medallion, and that's it as far as markings go. Well, there's a little proof mark too. The sights on this are actually kind of interesting. They're not really done these days that much. I think there's a couple SIGs out now that kind of have a trench sight thing going on, but right there's the front sight. Here's the rear sight. Absolutely tiny. I mean, tiny sights. And as you can see, it's kind of disappearing with this green, but that's it. That's all you get. It's there. You can see it a lot better in person, but that's what you're going to be aiming down. So it's not really a gun that you're going to be aiming too much. And the reason they went for this is it would snag less, you know. With something that's going to be just sitting in your pocket you pull out, you're not really going to want too many things sticking out. That's why it's hammerless too. So that's snag free, so they went with that. Let's check, make sure it's empty. Okay. This actually does have a magazine disconnect for some reason. Let's press that down. Nothing happening. Now, if you caught that, it actually doesn't have a linear trigger. It looks a lot like it, but if we press this down and pull the trigger, you can see. Oh, if we can get it here. It is a fulcrum trigger, which is a little strange because at the time all of his were linear triggers. Other than that, though, it's a very basic gun. We've got serrations, of course. Got the extractor, it's blowback. Safety here, so that is safe. So even with that depressed, it's not going to go off. And then right there, it doesn't have a last round hold open, but for some reason it has a cutout there to hold it in the rear. I guess to make cleaning it easier, if you're not wanting to take it apart all the way, you can just stuff something down there and get it all out, or clearing a jam, whatever it might be, they made it easier. That's really about it. We got grip safety, of course, and a heel release magazine. I guess they kind of thought you didn't really need more than one magazine than this. So we got Cal 25 Colt. For some reason, Colt at the time, all of their magazines had this weird, it was bare steel up here and blued up to about where the first round would sit. I don't know if it's because they knew it was going to be worn off, or maybe when they dipped it in the blue they held it from there. I'm not sure, but actually if I take this off too, this one's a little worn so it's harder to tell, but you can see there's a very fine line there. I don't know why it's done. That's what I'm assuming, but it's just a interesting little design quirk. And that magazine, let me zoom out so you get a good idea. That's it. I mean, it's the size of my finger. Okay, it's tiny. Let's go ahead and start disassembling this thing, and then we can move on to a little bit of shooting with it. Okay, so to begin disassembly, you actually do have to dry fire it, so just check a couple times that it is in fact empty. So you go ahead and dry fire it. Take the magazine out. Now what you're going to want to do is pull back the slide just slightly, and at a certain point the barrel is going to rotate. You just kind of have to keep playing with it until you get right to that point. There we go. As you can see, rotates to the left there, and then everything just comes right off. So from here, you've got your recoil spring, and the plunger goes in that way. If we tip this over, this is actually striker fired. It's not hammer fired like the 1903 hammerless is. It's just a normal striker, and there it is, a very small striker at that. And then as far as the barrel goes, we rotate it back, and then it just pops right out. It's a very small barrel, very small slide, but that's it. That's all you're working with there. And you really don't need to take it any further apart than this. Very basic stuff in here, of course. Just your standard grip safety. If you looked at a 1911 or anything like that, it's comparable to that. Okay. But once again, I mean, that's all you got working with. I'll even show you how to put it back together because it's just very simple. Barrel goes in. Okay, there's little grooves. I don't know if you can see that. Those right there. That those grooves fit in. When you fit there, it turns. Okay. Now we put this back into there. Set that down. We go over here to the firing pin. Put it in, line it all up. Now we put the slide onto the frame, and then we kind of guide the recoil spring in down at the bottom. If we can get it. Okay. Sometimes it gets stuck like this. Just fidget with the barrel a little and it'll eventually work itself out. And then you just have to pull back to meet those grooves. There it is. Turns, let go, and you're back together. So now that we've gone over all that, we'll take it out and just do a little bit of shooting. I don't intend on actually hitting anything with that. It'd be kind of difficult. And then another thing is, with my hands at least, and I've got pretty normal sized hands, they're not overly big or overly small, I actually kind of have trouble getting that grip safety engaged because you got to push it down all the way. So if you're doing this, like, there, it went off then, but every now and then it just gets a little harder to do. There, like that right there, those first sounds you were hearing, it wasn't going off, the trigger's just slipping. You have to really, you almost have to hold it out like this with your thumb, but there we go. So we'll go out there and shoot. If it did even hit the plate, it'd just make a little noise. It probably wouldn't move it too much, but we'll shoot it anyway. Okay, so here we have the gun. Magazine's already in it, so you just pull it back like normal. Goes right in, we're good. And I'm just going to go ahead and do one of these shooting like this because I don't really think we're going to be hitting it. So you guys might as well see what it looks like. Let's see. Oh, how about that? Okay. There we go. I'm actually really happy with that. I was aiming through the camera, so it was even harder. But there you go. That was the Colt 1908 Vest Pocket Pistol, and we'll see you next time.